Tonight we're hitting this topic of ethics. Interesting. What is ethics? The study of ethics. Well, getting right into it, folks, Christian ethics is simply about the question, or the answer to the question, what is right? What's right? And you see the signpost up there. It's got all kinds of different directions that you can go. You can go the right way, you can go the wrong way, you can do things because it's your duty, or you can do things because it's good. All of these things are things that we want to know which direction, God, do you want us to turn through the course of our day? Because we all have to make all kinds of decisions, and we want to make the right decision, don't we? Of course we do. Now the world, though, says there's no such thing as right or wrong. That is what we're being taught. That's what the children are being taught in the elementary schools all the way up through the universities. If you go into a university class on ethics, they're going to basically tell you that there is no such thing as absolute truth. And that's why we've got a world that's in a mess right now. Because, as you know, and I mean, I don't need to tell you, the ethical standards out there today that are being practiced in the world are a mess. Doesn't seem like there's any ethical standards, does it? People seem to be able to do whatever they want to do. And we end up having to be the ones suffering from it all. And I think the Christians need to be able to answer some very fundamental questions. And this is kind of one of them. If you try to point out, especially even to a brother or sister, bro, if you keep on doing that, you're going to suffer. There's going to be consequences. And they'll turn to you and say, hey, don't judge me, bro. You know, they'll say something, who made you the judge? Right? And they'll say, doesn't the Bible say, judge not, lest you be judged? Matthew 7:1-5 is where we get that scripture. Judge not, lest you be judged. The very first verse in that is, judge not, or you too will be judged. So there's a kind of a warning there to begin. It says, for in the same way that you judge others, you will also be judged. And with the measure that you use, it will be measured to you. So, better be careful before I start pointing the finger at someone else. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye when you've got a plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a big plank in yours? And it concludes, you hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So, two questions here. The first one is this. Is that scripture saying that we're never to judge? No, it's not. If you're going to point your finger, be careful. You got those three pointing back at you. So it says, first, judge yourself. And then you'll be able to help pull that speck out of your neighbor's eye. So the first commandment we're given is, when it comes to wanting to be right, to be righteous, to live an ethical life, is to continually judge ourselves. Look in that mirror and don't forget what we saw. And so we are called to stand up, and if we can see that there's a bridge out on the road and they're driving down that road at 50 miles an hour, get in front of that car and risk ourselves for the sake of getting them to stop before they go over that bridge into the ravine. Matthew 5:13 says, you are the salt of the earth. If the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It's good then for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. Salt. Salt seasons things. Salt brings out the flavor. It shows the difference between something bland and something with a different taste. That's what salt does. It brings to life the flavors, right? And that's what Christianity does. That's what the truth that we've been given does to people. It points out to them the right way as opposed to the wrong way. It puts a divider in the middle. Tonight's topic, as you can see, is sociology. What's sociology? Sociology is really the study of social order. It's what makes society tick. Why do some societies thrive and others fail? I saw this a bus billboard around the corner from my house. And it made me stop and think. Community is the backbone of society. Is it? Is that true? But that's what the world teaches, folks. And one of the things that I think we want to learn through the course of all of these, and one of the things that I know I've learned, is the subtle ways that our enemy, Satan, he is the one who is working in the spiritual realm to give bad ideas to people. He's good at getting those bad ideas across in such a subtle way that we don't even see it coming. And before we know it, we're flat on our face. Christianity's fundamental claims that the individual and the family are the backbone of all society. That a healthy society is dependent upon healthy individuals and healthy families. And that the role of society is to honor and protect and to promote the individual and the family. Continuing on those fundamentals, Christian sociology is based on the proposition, the idea. Remember, we battle ideas. That the individual as well as the social order are both important to God. God created the individual. He created us to be social. He is the one in charge of the governments. God cares about all areas of sociology. Now, if you just focus on one of those two areas to the detriment of the other, you have a fallen society. We have humanistic government and education that is running the show in this country right now. The media. It's all based upon humanism, which comes from the basic concept that there is no God, that it's all about man. And they believe that the social order is most important. According to Christianity, Christ died and rose again to give every individual the opportunity to be free. He places a responsibility on us, but then again, he gives us the freedom to take these wonderful gifts that God has given us, our creativities, all of our special giftings that we have, and he gives us the ability to take these and practice these out in life. But God has also ordained the social institutions to teach love and respect and discipline and work and community. So the family and the church and the state, according to Christianity, are the three fundamental structures of society. Our Christian worldview of law, let's boil this down. We believe that the Christian concept of law consists both of natural law, which is what we find in creation, and conscience. We look around and all creation declares the glory of God. And we have within us the testimony of God. Eternity in our hearts, it says in Ecclesiastes. God has made it abundantly clear to every heart that God is alive and well. And that's our conscience. And then we also have biblical law as well. We believe that his law is eternal. It never changes because God is eternal. God never changes. He doesn't have to change his laws because we decide to change our mind. We believe that because his law is permanent, someday God will use it to judge the world. All the more reason why the world needs to hear what God's law is to warn them of that impending judgment. We believe that God established government and the rule of law to keep in check humanity's sinful nature and passions. We believe that when God's laws are obeyed, people and society thrive. Conversely, we believe that a society that ignores God's law will be out of step with reality. We want to live in reality. We believe that the greater the obedience, the greater the blessing. And the greater the rebellion, the greater the poverty. We believe that rights come from God alone. Christians believe rights come from God alone, and that they are unalienable, which means they can't be stripped, they can't be taken away. Why? Because they come from God. And they come with specific responsibilities. If rights come from God alone, then man cannot create a right. He can't create a right to health care. He can't create a right to marry two females, because it's not something that was established by God to be unchangeable throughout all of time. God's word and nature's law, we believe, are sufficient for mankind to establish a legal system. That's what we saw in the formation of America. We believe a legislator's job is not to create new laws, only to enforce the eternal laws that God has already written. We believe that systems that deny God as lawgiver fail for two reasons. One, they deny the dignity of the individual, that we have been created in the image of God. If they deny that God is the lawgiver, and they say that man can write laws, they say that you're not able. We'll choose what laws work. We'll tell you what you can do and what you can't do. Secondly, they fail because they reject the sin nature of man. As we've said before, the sin nature of man is so integral to all of life. And this doctrine is only found in Christianity. Because we hold to this so strongly and apply it into every walk of life, it gives us the appropriate answers to how to deal with the situations around us. We can factor in the sin nature, and we can come up with a law that takes that into account. Why else do you think that they came up with the three branches? Checks and balances, because they knew the sin nature. If they gave enough power to any one of those branches to take over, they would have tyranny again. That's what they gave their lives and their fortunes and their honor to defend against. God's physical laws and his moral laws are fixed and fine-tuned. They're there to keep order in the universe and to allow for our greatest enjoyment and pleasure. They can't be disobeyed, disregarded, or ignored without serious consequences. You can't just get in your car, hit that gas pedal, and not pay attention to anybody else around you. We can't just live our lives not paying attention to what's going on around us. We know this to be true. The most murderous century in history followed the acceptance of evolutionary law, coupled with the rejection of divine law. Our key verse, once again, is 2 Corinthians 10, 4 and 5. That is our job. We demolish ideas, anything that comes up against the knowledge of God. Because we don't fight with the armaments of the world, right? We battle against ideas. And this is one of those ideas. Religion and politics don't mix. Way back before the 50s, politics and religion were spoken of, especially in the church. Because why? Because we deal with morality. That is our job. That is our business. That's what we do. And that's what government is all about. Government is all about establishing laws and legislation to protect people from harm, from doing wrong things. That's morality. Separation of church and state. They say it's the law, but that's false. The statement's not found anywhere in the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or the Declaration of Independence. Those documents are our contracts between the people and the government. That is our contract. And there's not a word in those documents about separation of church and state. Where does that come from? It comes from a letter from Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist Association in 1802. Just a little snippet out of a letter that he sent. The whole scenario was this. Jefferson had just gotten elected. There was this rumor going around that Jefferson was going to help this denomination, the Congregational Church of America, to become the National Church of America. The Danbury Baptist Association was obviously worried about this. He responded back to soothe their fears. And he used that phrase. There is a wall of separation that's established by the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, separating the government from the church. And its whole purpose in this statement was letting them know that the federal government would not enact any laws that would establish a single denomination to be over the churches in America. That's, for heaven's sake, why everybody came to America in the first place. They came here to not be dictated to as a church. His letter was there to assure the Baptists that government could not dictate matters over the church. That's it. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution states, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. It's not going to create a law that creates a national church. But the second half says it even more clearly, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Congress will make no law prohibiting the free exercise of religion. Tell me, how do you stretch that to say that, oh, that means that people who are religious can't be involved in government? Absolutely not. It actually gives them total freedom to be involved in government. In the course of 150 years of Supreme Court decisions, there had been 4 or 5 cases that came before the Supreme Court where somebody had argued this concept that Jefferson had stated that there should be a wall of separation and the church should not be involved in government. Every time the Supreme Court had looked at it and come back again. No, that's not what Thomas Jefferson said. But in 1947, for the first time in over 150 years of the Supreme Court, they ruled that Jefferson had meant to say that there should be a wall of separation to keep religion out of the government. A complete and utter misinterpretation and misrepresentation of Jefferson's letter. So because of this one irresponsible ruling by the court, people believe that the Constitution requires a separation of church and state, but it absolutely does not and never did. But our culture tells us things like this, hey, you religious folks, you need to just keep your mouths closed and stay out of this, because all you have your religion, but we're secular, and so we can govern and you can't. But then what do? They start writing laws about marriage, and yet marriage is probably the most moral concept in the entire Bible. They say that homosexuals should be able to marry. Why? Because it's right and it's fair. Those two terms, aren't those moral terms? It's right, or it's wrong, or it's fair, or it's not fair. Aren't those moral issues? And don't we have the highest moral code that humanity has ever seen? That's been stated over and over and over again by people who are far more brilliant than you or I. Thomas Jefferson stated clearly that the teachings of Jesus Christ are by far the highest moral teachings that the planet has ever seen, and that we should attempt to follow these teachings. And our laws concerning property, like burglary and stealing, trespassing, those are regulating immoral misuse of another person's property. It's a moral issue. If anybody should be involved in the creating of, the legislating of, the judging of what's right and what's wrong in this country, shouldn't it be Christians? Hello again, and welcome to the second class in our series of biblical worldview studies titled Thinking Like a Christian. Today our focus is going to be on the Christian worldview of history. And we'll begin by stating that if you're going to build your worldview upon something, that something had better be solid. We need to have utter confidence that our foundational belief system is standing on solid ground, not moving and shifting like sand, but solid as a rock. And Christianity sinks or stands upon the words in the Bible that we hold in our hands. So we're going to spend the first half of this class proving the absolute reliability of the Bible as not only a dependable source for history, but also a supernatural source for truth and knowledge and wisdom, the perfect how-to book for living a successful life. The second half will focus on the evidence that God is just as active in our daily lives today as he was when Jesus walked on the earth. History is a record of everything that God has done in the workings of his people. Therefore, as children of God, for us to forget any portion of God's history is the equivalent of forgetting a portion of him. So if the Christians don't remember the true history of God and what he's done through the ages, who will? He thought every moment was important. Shouldn't we? Now, this is the outline for today. We're going to cover three major areas in regard to the Bible. First, the Bible is supernatural in its origin. Most university professors today view the world from a naturalist's perspective. They were raised under this Darwinian belief that there's nothing other than what you can see, touch, taste, and feel. But Christianity goes well beyond that. We believe firmly in the supernatural, and supernatural simply means above and beyond the natural. What we'll show you in this class is that the Bible is supernatural in its origin. It's come to us from a source outside, from above and beyond this world. Secondly, the Bible is supernatural in its transmission. Well, what do you mean? Well, how did it get to us? You've heard people say, how can you trust the Bible? It's so old, it's been translated so many times, it's just a bunch of myths and contradictions. Well, we'll see about that. Third, the Bible is supernatural, otherworldly in its message. God has provided many proofs that the message contained in our Bible came to us from outside of our time dimension, which you'll see. Now, the socialist term for charity is economic or social justice, and it states that regardless of anyone's work ethic, their moral choices, or their attitude, that everyone has a right to anything that's available in that society, and that it's the government's responsibility to disperse everyone's property equally among the people. In other words, to take from those who have and to give to those who don't have. The traditional American biblical standard regarding charity or welfare is much different, though. Before the 20th century, the notion that the poor were somehow entitled to the property of others had no place in America. The Bible itself teaches no unconditional duty to help others simply because they need help. Paul commands, "He who does not work, neither shall he eat." Because Paul knew that there's always plenty of work to be done. Even if you're not getting paid, you can always do something to contribute to the welfare of others by simply working to help out others. Paul says that there's no duty to support anyone who can work but chooses not to. The Bible knows nothing of either legal or moral entitlements to the property of another simply because someone needs help. Paul's command, if obeyed then, would mean the immediate end of the welfare state. And now, it's not the Bible, but Karl Marx who teaches, to each according to his need, from each according to his ability. The Bible simply says, you shall not steal. You shall not covet what is not yours. We should mention that prior to Christianity, there were no such things as hospitals. In both Roman and Jewish cultures, ordinarily, the sick were cast aside and treated as inferior. Only the elite people, the well-connected, the rich, could afford any kind of medical treatment. Care for all of those with ailments was a uniquely Christian idea based upon the fact that all men are created in the image of God. But by 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea proclaimed that every city with a cathedral should also have a hospital, which should also serve as a shelter for the poor. So you see, it was the compassion of Christianity alone that gave us the hospitals and the homeless shelters that we have now.